Welcome to Kyla's Crafty Chaos. How's everyone going? I'm Kyla, and this is one of my very first videos. So if you amazing people could all like, share, and subscribe, that would be amazing to try and get my channel out there. Try and actually boost the numbers, because I think at the moment the only people following are my best friends, who I love very much. Today I'm going to make a cover for my desk chair. It's something I've been wanting to do for a very, very long time. Get it looking nice for this channel because it's a good chair. It's just not my favorite color. Now, I got this desk chair from one of my previous jobs. I worked as a graphic designer for 9 years, which was amazing, and I do miss it. But then the company went under. At one point we started working from home, so we all got to take some office supplies with us, and I chose to take the chair because it's very ergonomic, and when my injury happened, my physio said that I should get an ergonomic chair. So this is one that has, like, you know, everything tilts the way it's supposed to, whereas all the other desk chairs at the job were more for aesthetic than comfortability. So I ended up grabbing this one, and it is bright red, but as you can probably tell from my setup and the clothing that I've worn so far, I clearly have a favorite color. I am going to be covering the chair with said favorite color. For the last two videos, I have just had the fabric I intend to use draped over it. This is how it actually is. It's a little bit dirty and stained in places because it belonged to several people before it came to me. So I will be giving it a bit of a clean and then putting this on. And one thing that I kind of want to do is use my Cricut to make a cool little design that says Creative Chaos along the back here. So let's get to it. First things first, I'm going to have to iron this because it has been in storage for quite a while and full of crinkles and creases from where it's been folded up. Let's make sure it's cotton. I'm going to fill this with water. I don't often steam it, but I will. So I put water in my iron for the first time in years, but it wasn't long till I remembered why I never used the steamer. Yeah, it's a pretty cheap iron and it's always dripped. But since I hadn't filled it with water in so long, I didn't realize that there was a lot of buildup in the vents that ended up on the fabric. Thankfully, it only took a quick clean with a baby wipe to get rid of it, and I was back to it. And fortunately, the iron didn't play up too much after that mess. Okay, so it's not perfect. You can still see some creases, but it is better than it was, and I am happy enough with that. I can work with this. Let's get this unplugged. Before I clean this, because it's going to be wet for quite a while, I'm just going to pin the fabric in and draw around the edge so I know roughly how much fabric I'm going to need to reupholster this. What I'm going to do is pin the fabric along where it meets the edge of the plastic. This isn't going to be perfect, it's just to get an idea of how the fabric will sit so I can get the darts in the right place, because next I'm going to trace along the edge to make a pattern, hopefully before my pen runs out. Now I am going to listen to YouTube because I like having sound on in the background, sorry. I've pinned the chair so that it is roughly in the right spot, so it's not going to warp too much when I do it. The underside is proving tricky because the way I have tilted the chair is very deep and I kind of don't want to move it because it's in my perfect spot, so probably won't show that because that's just going to be me faffing about. Not me, just doing some really, really bad habits. Honestly, I find it easier to hold the pins in my mouth. I do have a pin cushion that I actually knitted myself. It's a very, very cute pumpkin, but for one thing, I made it before my hands gave out, so now wearing something like that puts too much pressure on my hands, and I still just find it easier to hold pins in my mouth. Hold on, I'll show you the little pumpkin thing. This is my pumpkin pin cushion. I knitted this gorgeous little pumpkin, and I crocheted a stem, a leaf, and a little curly vine, and then it's all tangled now, but I did a little knotting work across the elastic, and it's very cute, just kind of sits on your wrist like this, but I can't wear it for long periods anymore, so mouth it is. Really bad habit. Don't do it. If you are learning to sew, do not put pins in your mouth. It is dangerous. I am not a good example. Do not do this at home. I have no idea how long this air erasable pen is actually going to last. I have already tried a couple of drops of water. I figured water would be the safest because I don't know how alcohol would react with the air dry component. So I did a couple drops of water in the bottom and blew down the tip to try and get as much of the ink to the bottom as possible. And certain fabrics tend to have the ink disappear fast. I noticed it was drying at the top already. So I'm going to have to try and get this bottom done really fast. Then I'm going to try and cut around it. Ooh. Nope, wrong way!
After struggling to get to the underside, I decided that maybe it was worth it to mess with my settings just to make it a bit easier on myself. But it had been so long since I'd changed it, I forgot that if you're not sitting on it, it just flies forward instead. And unfortunately, it didn't make much difference in the end.
I have tilted the chair back as far as it will go, and I still cannot fully reach the underside. This is going to be interesting.
So, a little bit of off-screen stuff happened because phone battery being dumb. I pinned and traced enough of the bottom to estimate the right shape, but it was still pretty uneven, so I used pins to trace what I had done onto newspaper, then I folded it in half and redrew it more symmetrical to make the best pattern I could. So this is my lovely little newspaper pattern. It's already pinned, and I am just going to cut around it with a seam allowance and use the air erasable pen to draw in the darts. And once that's done, I'm just going to overlock the edges so they don't fray, because they are just going to tuck in and glue under the plastic. So the only actual sewing is going to be the darts. Yay, darts. This here is a little trick I do to line things up nicely. I put a pin through the fabric, usually somewhere in the corners, and then when I flip the fabric over, I can use these points to line the pattern up on the other side, despite the seam allowance. And now I can get the darts accurate on the other side. It's not a perfect method, but it lets me get pretty close. And it doesn't take as long as some of the other ways I would have tried to ramble through it.
Now, this is ready to sew. So I've already made a start on the base by at least pinning it all into place because it's got a nice sculpt back. So the fabric is nice and smoothed in there. And I've poured half my pins out on the top. So let's get pinning the bottom half. I'm going to listen to TV while I do. So one of the interesting parts of drafting your own pattern is sometimes you come across little interesting situations like this where it's like, where do I put the dart? So I tried doing just one dart, but that's still creasing weirdly. So I may actually have to do two, sort of coming from here and here, just on the corners at least. Trust me, because of my body shape, I am constantly having to redraft patterns or even just make my own from scratch. So I'm always playing around with darts, trying to find the best place for ones that will actually fit my figure. Seems like this is the same, but at least with this, I'm not trying to find darts while attached to my body, which I am doing without my mannequin. I will get my mannequin back one day. Fingers crossed. Okay, at least to my eyes, these darts here in the front look fairly even and they're just small, so they should go quite nicely. I am probably going to have to look up how to get this to conform to this so nicely, because at the moment all I can think is either glue, which would harden the fabric and discolor it, which I don't want, or maybe just tacking little points along there so that it stays in place, but then I might end up with pulls, but we'll see if there are any other ideas out there and then figure out what looks best. At the moment, out of my two options, I'm leaning towards tacking it. But hey, maybe once it's smoothed in place, it might actually just sit nicely anyway. So I've got all my little pins for the form fitting. I have pinned all the way around the base, and I have 8 fairly symmetrical darts, enough that it's not going to bother me if it's not. I think for this one I'm not even going to do what I did with the last one in half the pattern, because that's still unpredictable as well. Let's just draw this in now. Okay, off camera I have cut around the base pattern and I've at least pinned all the darts, so I'm going to be stitching it a bit later because I have some other things I'm going to do first, including clean the chair. This was what I'd intended to do first. I ended up doing it now because usually when I do projects I flit about. I do 3 to 5 in a day and end up doing them slowly throughout the week. I am trying to stick to just one project today to try and get this done. So throughout my videos, you'll likely notice me randomly change outfits, and that is just because I am often doing one project throughout various days of the week. Like, I probably won't actually get this done until tomorrow. Maybe, it depends. To clean the chair, it's gonna get very wet, and I didn't want it to ruin the fabric or wet the fabric while I was pinning the pattern, so I decided to do that part first instead. So now we're going to clean the chair. So let me just put up my hair. That's another thing that you'll likely notice throughout a video even, is my hair will probably go up and down all the time because I love my long hair, but it always gets in the way and sometimes it ruins projects. So I put my hair up in a bun with whatever is lying around. Today it is a paintbrush. Sometimes it'll be down, sometimes it'll be up, and this is definitely an up situation. So let's get this baby clean. So far, the cleanest parts seem to be here. So at least that's good because they are the difficult parts to reach. Okay, and we'll do a bit of a stretch because unfortunately it is things like this that actually hurt my arms the most, especially if I'm trying to twist something or if I'm gripping something. That is one of the things that I do still struggle with, which still happens a lot in crafts. So I'm just gonna have a quick stretch break before I move on to the next part. I could probably do the vacuuming a bit better, but vacuuming hurts. I struggle to do it. Let's get going with the next step, which is hot soapy water. This should clean up a good amount of the grime, and then after Google said to use isopropyl alcohol, because I don't have any upholstery cleaner on hand, and I'm trying to only use what I already have lying around for this. Now, time to tackle this big stained dirty patch at the front, which is the worst looking bit. It's all going to be covered up by the fabric, so aesthetically it doesn't overly matter, but I would like it to look a little bit better before I finish making it look nice. Ah, spinny chairs. I love and hate you. Love for the spinning ability. Hate for when I'm trying to clean you and you're spinning out of my hand, so I hate you for the spinning ability. Screw it, at this point I'm just slithering on a whole bunch of suds rather than stopping to wring the cloth out. Easier on my hands, and I don't have to go back to the bucket as often. Yes, it makes the chair much wetter, but it saves a bit of time because my hands will only last so long before they go, no, I can't do this anymore, thanks. And then this can go sit under the aircon to dry out, or maybe outside, I don't know. It is like almost 30 degrees outside. I have not actually checked the temperature since this morning. It was 20 degrees Celsius plus all night. It was absolutely gross. It was bucketing this morning. The sun is at least now out, so maybe I can use some of that sun and horrible, horrible heat to my advantage. Maybe a bit better than an aircon. I'm gonna put a lot of focus on this front area because this was the area that was dirtiest. Ugh, wet fabric. Horrible, horrible texture. I hate this feeling. It is gross. Okay, so it's actually been a couple of days. So the other day I finished scrubbing down the chair, put it out in the sun. It was completely dry in a couple of hours, so good choice there. But of course then I started doing some design work on the decal I'm going to put up here, and between cleaning the chair and doing some computer work, my hands said no, I've had enough for today. I was in quite a bit of pain, so I stopped for the day. I continued doing the rest of the graphic design stuff. You should be seeing my work at the start of these videos because I actually had not done all of my logos and designs and whatnot for the intro. When I first started filming, I was just like, yeah, let's get into this. The chair is clean! The chair is clean! Oh my gosh, I can't believe how much of a difference that made. It's not perfect, but all of the dark up here, gone. The massive patches of staining, mostly gone, but there used to be a sort of round water stain like one here and just a big dirty patch here, and yet they are mostly, if not completely gone. It worked well. I have also sprayed the entire chair down with isopropyl alcohol just to try and kill off any germs, because again, the main point isn't getting it clean aesthetically, it's getting it clean dust and germ wise so that it is nice and clean to be covered. I have got the pre-cut and pinned fabric here. I'm going to do the darts in it and overlock around the edges. Step 1, darts. I hate darts. They're tedious and annoying and finicky and unfortunately necessary. And I've been sewing darts for at least 2 decades now, so you'd think I'd be good at them, but no matter how many I do, I just never seem to get them right. And sadly, I don't think today is the day I will end up with perfect looking darts. Thankfully, step 2, running an edge through an overlocker, is probably the easiest thing you can do when your overlocker is cooperating. And today it is! Thank you, Lockie! I'm doing this around the entirety of both pieces so that they are nicely finished, and I don't have to worry about them ripping and fraying as I work on them. And then they're ready for the next step. Okay, up to decal making. I created the design yesterday, and I'm using one of my last scraps of heat transfer vinyl. I'm going to have to buy some more at some point, but right now I really don't have the money to do that, especially with vet bills. Fingers crossed this all goes well. Should do, so go on through. So, okay, good, it's starting on the right side. I've got it mirrored as you're supposed to. Let's just let this go. Bugger, I think part of my design might actually be cut off, at least in the corner. Hopefully it's only the end of I think it's part of the sewing machine. Hopefully it's not going to be too bad. As I was watching this, I was noticing that it was going off the edge slightly, so hopefully it's not terrible. I can just see a corner there. Fingers crossed. And we're done. Yeah, I can see it's missing a whole bottom corner of the sewing machine there, which really sucks because this was my only vinyl. Hopefully it won't be too egregious. Maybe I could cut just the sewing machine on one of these little bottom bits and fix it up. Let's see. Some of the smaller bits haven't fully come out, so I have to be really tactful with that. And I am going to isolate that sewing machine part of the decal and just cut that again, and hopefully I can get it roughly in the right spot that it's supposed to be. Alright, so the little sewing machine is done and it is time to start weeding them both. I'm using my light board so that I can see through the cracks just a little bit better. There are so many little dots. I'm not the most wonderful at weeding, especially with really tiny details, because the little bits always peel up too, no matter how hard I try and prevent that. But I always do designs with really tiny finicky bits. To make things easier on myself, I'm just going to cut off the excess as I go. That way, I shouldn't accidentally pull up too many pieces I don't mean to, and I can see what I'm doing a bit better. I envy people who can pull up their vinyl in one clean sweep and not lose half their pieces. I'm not going to worry too much about the sewing machine down here because, as you know, it's half cut off. You can see, now that I've got that, it's missing a whole bit just down there. Weeding is by far the most tedious and least fun part of making stuff with a Cricut. Make sure I don't stab myself in the process. Alrighty, so I've got the bulk of it off. Now to do the in-between bits. Well, my phone died, but while it was charging, I weeded this little guy. And he came out quite nice. There were some little finicky bits coming off these swirls, but I had to sacrifice them because they were way too small. By the way, if you ever watch what I do and think, this girl is just making things hard on herself, feel free to drop some friendly advice in the comments. I may have been doing some of these crafts for years, but I am by no means an expert in any of them. I have so many crafting hobbies, I'm more of a jack of all trades. I don't always look up tutorials first and usually just stumble along figuring things out as I go, seeing what works, what doesn't, and this usually means I use a method that is different and often more difficult from what others do. So if you do know a better way of doing things, let me know. I love talking crafts with others. But now that this thing is finally weeded, it's time to figure out where to place it on the fabric. I think this will actually look pretty good. I think that once this is actually on there and lint rolled, because everything in this house gets covered in cat fur and Kyla fur. Darts didn't turn out terribly, a little bit crinkled but not bad, and it looks like it's going to fit on quite nicely. You know what? I'm going to lint roller this first.
Once the cover was completely defluffed, I found the best spot for the decal, pinned it on, and started ironing.
Okay, let's iron it on.
I haven't used heat transfer vinyl too often, but I think you're supposed to keep a firm, even heat on it. But I know from other projects that this iron doesn't distribute heat evenly like a heat press would. It's hotter in the vents. Yeah, remember those vents?
Oh, shivers. I really should just pour this water out.
Water removed so this doesn't happen again. I'm also putting down a tea towel over top to stop any more direct water contact and hopefully protect the plastic from warping. I'm going to keep the iron moving just to keep the heat dispersal as even as I can. Eventually, I realised that the foam layer over grated metal of the ironing board wasn't giving me enough pressure from underneath, so I put down a wooden board and this worked a lot better. Of course, it had been so long since I'd done heat transfer that I forgot you're supposed to let it cool before peeling the plastic.
Oh god. That's right, I gotta let it cool a bit.
So, to make sure it's nicely on there, I put my biggest, heaviest book on my shelf on top. The Charmed Book of Shadows replica.
Bit of a time skip because I once again ran out of battery on my phone. Problem with, one phone camera setup. I peeled it off and it is done. And it looks really cool and I'm so happy with this. I can't wait to get it on the chair. I'm onto the final phase of this chair, which is getting it actually on. So I've pinned it in place. I am still not sure how I'm going to get it to contour. I'm thinking at the moment I'm just going to leave it, and when I sit, it'll form to that because it's got the space. It just won't constantly look formed like it is. The way that I wanted to do this originally was, proper upholstery way, take the chair apart, have just the board parts, get the fabric, staple it in. I couldn't do that for two reasons. A, I don't have a staple gun, and two, I can't get the back off. I tried. You are supposed to be able to just pop this off. There's no screws holding it in place, so I should just be able to pop it off in theory. Theory does not hold up because my hands hurt too much and I do not have the strength needed to pull it apart. So I would need another person to help me out with that, which sucks, and unfortunately that's just my life right now. So I'm doing things the best way that I can. I could have asked someone for help, but I really struggle with that. I am so bad at asking for help. If Google can't tell me what to do, then nope. I'm good. I'll just figure it out. Because of that, that's the reason why I did it this weird unconventional way of pinning around it and cutting it out while leaving it all as an assembled chair. I tried Googling the best way to attach the fabric, but they all showed the classic upholstery way, which I can't do. So I'm just gonna wing it as I do. I think that the best way to do this is to use fabric glue. I have Mod Podge and Tiger Grip, and then I am going to put some of that down underneath and use this. This is not my regular one, this is my spare one. My other one is still safe up in my Cricut behind me. This is my first one that the entire set got butchered by various ways because I am incredibly clumsy and I do things without thinking. Anyway, I am going to use this to run the fabric down along the seams of the plastic to shove it in there where hopefully the glue will keep it in place, and I've got these pins holding the fabric in place until it dries. But now that I've got this, let's go. I should probably have a brush as well. That would help. Let's bring down the brush container, see which one works best. That one's quite stiff because I've clearly let glue dry in it before. So honestly, a stiff one wouldn't be too bad with this job. Yep, I reckon those will work. I think that this base here is probably going to be the hardest one because there's a lot more excess fabric than there is space to actually jam it down. So really this one actually needed to go in a little bit more, but hopefully I can get it okay. This one I know will go back very easily, so I might actually start with that, especially since I know I'm going to be leaning on this for support.
I'm just really going to try and make sure it's in the cracks because I'm pretty sure it's going to discolor the fabric. When this fabric gets wet, it goes very dark, and I don't want that showing through too much. I would be able to do this a lot easier if my hands didn't hurt so much, and I had better grip strength. But alas, I do not, so this is what I'm doing, and I just hope it turns out okay. Maybe in future years I might be able to actually do this as initially intended. Nothing wrong with revisiting a project.
So as you can see, now that it's tucked in, that is looking pretty good, and I'm really hoping it's going to hold. I'm just going to run the baby wipe down the plastic to try and get rid of the glue. Some of the glue's coming through, but it doesn't look terrible. The corners are where it is hardest to get the glue into the crevice. Ooh, actually this entire top bit might be. Oh gosh. That light is really, really shining, isn't it? I will learn camera skills one day, I promise. I do.
The corners being really tight might be a nightmare on my hands now, but in the long run, it might actually be an advantage. Hopefully it's tight enough that when the glue dries, it might have a better hold than the looser sides will. Just to be safe, I'll probably keep the pins in for a good few hours, if not a day, just to make sure that the fabrics really stick together and don't pull away before the glue is fully dry.
Ow. Tell you what, I am not looking forward to doing the underside of this, because it's so hard to reach, like crazy hard. This is looking pretty good. Still a bit of rogue glue that I need to get off. But despite that, that is in there really nicely. So hopefully if this glue does the trick, then this is going to look really good. So I am quite happy about that. This was, as I said, since I couldn't do what I really wanted to do, this was always going to be a haphazard job. So I can settle for imperfection, maybe just this once. Okay, now for the incredibly difficult part, getting this bottom bit in. Now there is one thing that isn't quite right, and it's on the badder side, and it is absolutely going to bug me, but frankly, after the day I've had, I am just exhausted. I'd finished pinning this top bit to it, and then I realized the problem that meant I might have to take it off. And I'm just too tired. Like I said, this is just my first attempt. I might be able to come back to this in the future when my hands are a bit better. So I'm not going to worry about it too much. This is the dart that I did. As you can see, I suck at doing darts because it doesn't taper off properly and it's left a lovely big little bloop, and that always happens. I just accept it these days. I call it a fashion choice. What happened was this. This is another overlap bit, and that probably just came about from the fabric because, you know, I sort of did it, and then because they weren't quite even, once it was off, I did the paper pattern, tracing both sides, found a good middle ground, and then did that. So while the darts probably were correct, doing the method that I did ended up creating a bit more fabric. So now there are two, there's another one on the other side. There are now 2 extra darts, and I should sew this. I really, really should sew this, but I just can't be bothered right now. And I know that's bad, and it's going to bug me, and it's probably going to get filled with all sorts of stuff, but I'm too tired. I have done so much, and I am going to half-ass this little bit, even though I shouldn't, because it'll still look cool. This is gonna be interesting. Oh, okay. You're probably gonna get some very weird angles. Nope. This is one of those times I wish I could take it off or move it more, but this is as far back as it goes. I almost need like one of those car mechanic-y things. Well, this is actually a better angle to work from. As for those darts that I mentioned, I'm actually gonna glue the base of them a little bit so that they stay as a dart in there. Last bit of the top, and my fingers are covered in glue. I hate that feeling. I have always hated that feeling. Did anyone else really, really hate paper mache? Like, oh my god, paper mache was the worst. I refused to do it as a kid. I could not stand the feeling.
Okay. Well, with that off my chest, back to the chair.
Actually, there's a pin underneath here. Let's pull that pin out. Get this dart sitting nicely. Maybe I might be able to tuck that in a bit better. Hello, darkness, my old friend. I've come to talk with you again.
One day, I won't drop everything that I hold, but it is not this day, or possibly even this year.
Okay, last little bit. It's getting there. Slowly, bit by bit. It's sort of working. So, time to get onto the base, let it dry. I might have to do something a little extra around the sides just to keep it in. I don't know, maybe another ring of glue or something, which means, heck, I might even deck it out with gems around the sides. Who knows? Just for it to be cool, but it is looking good. I am Bit surprised and very happy.
This was the one where there was a lot of excess, so it's going to be really interesting trying to get this all down and in. But I'll just start by sort of jamming it in there, then I'll go back over and really try and tuck it back in. As long as I can mostly hide the white overlocking. Hey, if you're enjoying this video, please give it a thumbs up or share it with someone who might love it too. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and notification bell if you want to see more content like this. I'd also love to hear from you, so leave a comment below or come join our chat over on my Discord. Your support helps my channel grow and it means the world to me. And if you'd like to be an extra super awesome supporter, I have a Patreon, a Ko-fi, and a craft shop where you can help out. Every little bit brings me closer to getting an editor so I can create even more videos to share with you. This metal ruler is a little more heavy duty and sturdier than the scraper, so I'm going to try and use that, except I kind of feel like I'm almost popping it back out.
I feel like I'm stabbing it, like, Argh. Oh, this is going to absolutely murder my hands.
Okay, I think some of that will do. Now I've just got this far corner left. Then I might just have a quick break and come back to do the sides and the back.
Get down there, you stupid thing. Come on. Ow. Good thing this wasn't a knife. I've done that too many times to count. Of course, I seem to have the most excessive fabric on the hardest of corners. Just want to get this bit looking not so terrible.
And yeah, this is hurting my wrists. So just jam this baby in there and come back to the gluing in maybe about an hour or so.
It's way too hot for this. There is still a bit of the overlocking showing through, and it's really bugging me, but this corner is so solid, I am struggling. Who knows, maybe I will do some piping of pearl, or like I said, add gemstones. Whatever I do at the end might hopefully cover that up. For now, I am going to take a bit of a break and put my hands on the massager and come back to this.
My break ended up being much longer than intended, and I didn't get back to it until later that night. And I didn't finish until sometime after 10 PM. By then, I was way too tired to talk to the camera and just really wanted to finish and get it done. Eventually, when I was almost finished working on the chair, I finally found the lever that pulls the back up and off the spine. I'd looked for it at the start and couldn't find it, and it would have made the entire process so much easier. So I was incredibly frustrated, to say the least. But I was just so tired at that point, I didn't even have the energy to say my internal monologue of, "Are you freaking kidding me?" out loud. I noticed that the plastic on the spine was really dusty, so I just had to give it a good wipe down. And finally, to hide the edges on the bottom, I piped some liquid pearl 3D paint around the edge. I used the seafoam colour as I have 3 bottles of that one, and it goes really well with the fabric. It did end up cracking slightly as it dried, because it only flexes so much, but it still looks way better than it would have without it. And done.
So there we go. I finally finished the chair and I am so happy with it. I mean, yeah, it's not perfect, which is something I'm gonna have to deal with, but I am limited in what I can do with my strength and my dexterity. And you know, I can always do it again later when my hands improve or I get help from someone. But for what it is, it's really cool. It is my favorite color. It's got a very me decal. It's just so cool. I'm so happy with how the top part came out, especially considering the fact that was the bit that I was most worried about. The bottom was the one I was more sure about, but I think it ended up looking not as good because of the base but having quite a tight ring. So not quite as good as I'd wanted, but not terrible either. Over time, I'll probably fix up the little pearl lining that I did, make it look a bit neater, and then that'll just look really cool. Plus, it's comfier. For me, textures is one thing I struggle with, especially with food, fabric, art supplies even, like I've mentioned before. I hate paper mache. I cannot stand paper mache. This chair, the fabric is way smoother than the very thick, heavy woven red fabric that was before, so it is just so much nicer to sit on. I can jump on it, curl up like this with my legs up, and I probably won't get fabric patterning in my leg. I am so happy with how this turned out. It's great. And you will probably now see this chair in all my videos. I figured since this one was going to be part of the set, I thought I'd get it done as an early project. I have so many plans coming up. I have been filming other things at the same time. I'm just going with it. I'm doing whatever. I'm just gonna have fun with this and make everything. And who knows, maybe I'll A, get this place looking good, B, get rid of some of my craft supplies, and C, I might even be able to start selling some of the stuff that I make. Anything anyone can do, I would so much appreciate it, as well as, you know, all the usual YouTube stuff, like, share, subscribe, get this new channel out to people. That would be incredible. We'll see where this goes. This channel is just going for it, and I'm looking forward to so many more videos to come, and I hope to see people coming in, seeing whatever wacky stuff I come up with. I'm Kyla, stay crafty and embrace the chaos. See you later.